Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, I'm Marisol Cartwright.
Mhm.
I am a senior account executive at Sunshine Insurance. I've been there now for about 14 years. But
Oh, okay.
but I've been in the insurance industry from since 2001, actually. I worked at J.S. Johnson first.
Mhm.
So I have joined this course because a passion of mine is helping persons create financial budgets and create a plan for their financial future. And we do
Okay.
not teach that in school. So a lot of persons are not well adversed with financial literacy. So I myself wanted to get a better understanding of it so that I can
Mhm.
be able to assist persons in the future.
Okay. All right. Okay. So far, it's been okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I see people are joining. When I first started, it was only 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Who's next? Not you,
No.
Mr. Pratt.
Yeah, sorry, my
I-
apologies. I was
I-
starting an exam. Okay, Bonnet. Thanks a lot, Bonnet. Yeah. Go ahead.
Morning, everyone. Good morning, Ms.
Morning.
Archer. Hope everyone's well. My name is Vonette Saunders. I work at IPG Family Office. I started this course really in regards to not just getting a better understanding of financial planning, but to also assist my clients in planning. Even though I work with wealthy clients, you'll be surprised to know that some of them don't, they just want to give it to someone to plan, but it's best for them to also know how to plan their future. Even though they might be trust babies, they really don't know what it is to plan for their future. They're
Okay.
always advised, yes, that's what you're paid for, but I'd
Mhm.
like to get a better understanding and to share the knowledge with them as well.
Okay. Very good. And so far, how the course has been? It's been helpful?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
Very enlightening.
Okay. All right. You're welcome. Who's next? You can turn off.
Okay.
Okay.
Dimitri, you in yet?
No, it's Dimitri now.
Tyrannic or do okay. Tyrannic is coming on.
Okay. All right.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Dimitri Maki. I am a branch manager at Scotiabank. Been in banking roughly 16 years.
Okay.
I took the course because I trying to break that stigma that all banks want to do is lend and not provide financial advice. So definitely want to be able to put my customers in better position, letting them know that, if a loan is not the best course of action, being able to provide them with other avenues in reference to how they're able to achieve their financial goal while also not putting themselves in the financial hole that could then negatively impact not just
Okay.
them, but their kids in the future.
Okay. Good. So far, that sounds like a good group. We're gonna have some good conversations. Okay. Who's next?
The Tyrannic go. Okay, sorry. Thanks.
No, Tara. I don't remember Terranique.
Good morning. My name
Morning.
is Trinique Kelly,
Oh, Trinique. Okay.
and
Go
I've
ahead.
been working within the financial industry for the past 5 years at Credit Suisse. My reason for taking this course was one, to advance my skills and become more knowledgeable about different aspects of the financial industry within my career, to enhance that, and also on a personal level to be able to gain more knowledge within being better able to help family members and other people just to plan, manage, and show that, okay, it is possible at any age. Once you have the financial literacy, you can put it into practice and plan your future plans more efficiently and more successful. So that is my goal.
Okay. All right. Anyone else, Miguel? Let's see.
Sorry, I was a little late. Did Marcel or Candace go yet, or?
I don't remember Maricel.
Yes,
Candace
Marcel.
did. Candace did. She was
Okay.
first.
All right. Marcel, how you doing?
Hi, Mr. Pratt, morning. I already went.
Oh, you ready?
Oh, you
Okay,
went?
then. So
Oh,
we
okay.
have Benitra.
Yeah. Who?
I went.
Oh, you ready? Right? So that's everybody.
Yeah. I think that's
Okay.
everybody now.
Okay, great. But one before Miss Archer starts, folks, I do have a couple of these more module 6. Has everybody collected module 6?
I was there yesterday, but you weren't in office and they weren't sure. So she told me to come back this morning.
Yeah,
All right,
same
but
for me.
do you have module
Lift it up for
5?
me, Mr. Pratt.
And no, she didn't know which one to give me. So she said she didn't want to give me the wrong one. But I told her when she showed me module 5, I showed her the email and I said, this is the same thing, but she didn't want to take the chance, I guess.
All right, please, folks, please come for it, because modules 5 and 6, folks, is 40 questions out of 80 questions as regards your financial planning exam, okay? So these
Mr.
two
Pratt, lift up
modules,
the book for me.
in other words, these two modules are actually the meat of the financial planning
What
program.
time are you leaving from the office today?
Today I leave at 4. I have exams
Okay.
at 4. Okay?
Okay.
All right then.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Archer, it's all yours.
Mr.
Thanks.
Pratt,
Yay.
just before, Mr. Pratt, lift up the book. Let me see if I have it. Lift it up to the camera again. Okay, no, I'll come today also to collect it.
Please do. Okay? All right, Mr. Archer, it's all yours.
Okay, I'm gonna send you a quick text, Mr. Pratt.
Mhm.
I'm gonna text you. Okay. All right. So again, good morning to everyone. Let's start. I mean, I know you've had a long journey, and so we're nearing the end of that journey now. And I got from all of your comments that you're really interested in trying to assist clients or persons coming to your office in terms of financial planning. And for those who don't have any knowledge of financial literacy, at least you'll be able to give some sort of guidance. So when we discuss different topics, just be mindful that it is focused on Bahamian law. And if there are instances where you have to give advice and go outside of the Bahamas, just remember that there are different laws in different jurisdictions. Just as a, like a precursor, so you don't think that everything is just based on Bahamian law. Sometimes you have to go outside in order to give advice, depending on who the client is. So let's start first. I don't like to do a lot of reading. I prefer discussion. I heard just now some of you don't have your material, but I think in the beginning, we should be able to have a good discussion. So let's start with our legal system. What are your comments on our legal system? What do you think? Don't be shy
In reference to crime or finance,
at all.
I think it's outdated.
I agree with you. Anybody else?
There are too
Ms.
many
Archer, I have
amendments.
2 statements.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Bonnet.
Go ahead. Oh, no,
Okay,
I just had a comment.
Okay, comment first then.
Okay, I just had a comment to say that there are too many amendments that you don't understand, meaning, say for instance, the investment one that recently I think is amending or is in draft or something, and then like you have one portion extracted and then you read that and then you try to go back to tie it in. It's confusing.
Okay, and then that brings me to the point I'm going to make with the materials that Mr. Pratt gave you all. There's a whole section on real property taxes, VAT, and stamp tax that the government amended. And you'll see if you have your manual in front of you. When I discuss it, you're going to see that the information has changed. So that's why I said to Mr. Pratt, I wanted to ask him the question if you study strictly from the manual, because the questions are already prepared, or can I make the changes and send it to you? So I'll find out from him which it is. But when we speak, I'm going to give you the current information, because that's what you need in order to make your decisions and to advise going forward. So I agree with you on both points. One, it's outdated. And two, the numerous amendments. And I think it is very difficult for a layperson, as you keep amending the law, for them to know what exactly is the position, because it's just constantly changing. Sometimes there's only one section, one subsection. Sometimes there's a whole section. And sometimes if you're not reading the papers or keeping up with what's on the website, you would not even know that something has been amended or repealed. So we know that for law, it can be divided into different types. You have civil law, criminal law, and public. If you're dealing with finances, that's civil law. If you're dealing with where someone would have misappropriated funds, fraud, then you move into criminal law. And then when you're talking about people and their constitutional rights, public law. So as a former colony of Britain, we have different sources of law. So our law came from different places. One would be the English common law. That is our British heritage. Then we got our constitution. After our constitution, we have our own cases, because we have our own judicature. We've established our own laws, which could be primary and subsidiary, which means acts and regulations. Our laws itself is determined by our custom, how we do things in the Bahamas. And of course, when judges make decisions, they look at what is equitable, what is fair, and what is just to the parties before them. So really a legal system, that's what we have, is a set of rules, a legal institution, because we have the courts, the machinery, and it operates to govern and regulate the relationships within the Bahamas, within the society itself and the state. That's the purpose of the laws of the Bahamas. So in your notes, I gave you the history of the court system in the Bahamas, how we went from Columbus then to 1647 came. And then when we became a British colony in 1783, and then we became independent in 1973. And we know that there are three branches of government: executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And we know that the head of our executive branch is, of course, King Charles. He is the head of state. And he is represented here in the Bahamas by the Governor General. And then we have the Supreme Court, and then the Court of Appeal. So in your notes, I give you the history of how the courts came into existence historically to the court system that we have right now. So in 1825, the following courts were in existence, called the Court of Chancery, the General Court, the Court of Law, the Court of Ordinary, and the Court of Vice Admiralty. Then Inferior Court was established in 1796. And in 1875, the judicial system in the United Kingdom changed and a new system came about. And the new system had a High Court of Justice, and that was divided into 5 divisions: the Chancery, the Queen's Bench, the Common Pleas, Exchequer, and the Probate, Divorce, and Admiralty. And then in 1880, they were merged into 3 divisions: the Queen Bench, Chancery, and the Probate, Divorce, and Admiralty. So if we look now at our judicial system, you know, at the very bottom, we have the Magistrate Court. Then you have the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, and then you have the Privy Council. And that's the route that matters can take depending on what the matters are. So in the Magistrate Court, they deal with civil and criminal cases. A magistrate is appointed by the Governor General. And the court is presided over stipendary and circuit magistrates. And that includes a chief magistrate and 2 deputies. And of course, the magistrates in New Providence can go to the. So we have 17 magistrate courts in the Bahamas, 14 in New Providence, 2 in Freeport, 1 in 8 Mile Rock. So the Governor General of the Judicial Legal Service Commission appoints the magistrate and 2 deputies. And of course, to be a magistrate, you have to have practiced at the bar for at least 5 years. And that's either the English bar, the Irish bar, Scottish, or the Bahamian bar. So above the Magistrate Court is the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court hears appeals from the lower court, which is the Magistrate Court. So there are 18 justices appointed to the bench of the Supreme Court, and that includes the Chief Justice. And they have unlimited jurisdiction for civil, criminal, and general matters. There are 2 judges in Grand Bahama, and matters from the northern region, which includes Bimini, Abaco, and Grand Bahama, they are heard there unless they are transferred to the Bahamas. So above the Supreme Court, you have the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal is the highest court that is resident in the Bahamas. And the Court of Appeal was established, like the Supreme Court, under the Constitution of the Bahamas. And the Court of Appeal can hear matters, and it has jurisdiction and powers that are conferred on it from the Constitution and the Court of Appeal Act. So the Court of Appeal can hear matters talking about enforcement of a person's fundamental rights and freedom. They can deal with any judgment or an order that was given on a civil matter. They can deal with persons who are convicted on information from the Supreme Court. They can deal with matters from the Industrial Tribunal, from the Courts Martial, any offenses under the Proceeds of Crime Act, any disciplinary matter from the Bar Council, matters from the Medical Council and Disciplinary Committee. Now, the Court of Appeal, like the Supreme Court, it has a registrar, and that registrar is the Civil Service Administrative for the purposes of the Judicial and Legal Service Commission regulations. The registrar also has other functions. Any correspondence that comes into The Court of Appeal goes to the registrar. The Court of Appeal of a president, a executive officio who sits only at the invitation of the president, justices as may be prescribed by Parliament, and presently there are 6, and that includes the president. So the sitting justices are the Honorable Sir Michael Barnett. The other justices are Justice Isaacs, Justice Crane Scott, Roy Jones, Milton Evans, and Carlotta Bethel. Above the Court of Appeal is the Privy Council, and the Privy Council is the highest court for the Bahamas, and that was established again in the Constitution under Article 105. And of course, the Privy Council has visited the Bahamas on several occasions where they sat and heard matters here in the Bahamas. So whenever you hear anyone speaks of what is the judicature of the Bahamas, then you know they're talking about our court system coming from the Privy Council to the Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, Magistrate Court, and then you have the Family Island administrators. Any comments? No comments?
So can we say the correct term? Let's say if that question is asked in the exam, can we say then that the correct format will then be the Family Island administrators, the Magistrate Court, the Supreme Court, and then go all the way up to the Privy Council?
Yes, Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, and then Privy Council.
Okay.
Mhm. Or a question comes asking you, where did the laws of the Bahamas come from? You should know what they are. Where did our laws come from?
For all of us in the class, kindly repeat it or state it.
We remember, right? Yes, the laws of the Bahamas came from the English common law because we were a former colony. Then we had the Constitution. So our laws came from the Constitution because I just finished telling you that all of the judicature is established by the Constitution itself, the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. You know, it came from English cases, Bahamian cases, and you know, it comes from the custom, how we live our life, how we interact. And also it is based on equity, being fair and being just. All right. So now let's look at, if you had to advise someone in a bank or even someone who's a foreigner who wants to talk about doing business. We know that there are different types of businesses, or way to go about doing business. You can have a sole proprietorship, you can have a partnership, or you can incorporate a company. So let's look at the legal consideration for someone who wants to do business in the Bahamas. So who could tell me what are the laws that govern doing business in the Bahamas? because that's your first step in guiding the person. What are the laws that govern doing business in the Bahamas?
They would all fall under, I guess, civil law.
Mm-hmm.
It applies to civil laws of the Bahamas when it comes to businesses, or if it's just a personal company being started.
Okay. And so if it comes under civil law, you can give me an example of any of them?
Mm,
But you have to be a requirement, business license, you have to have a business license in order to operate
Mm-hmm.
country. I think registered under, VAT.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I
So
think
now,
it's a good standing.
okay, that's a document. Now we're doing the law. I've gotten the laws now. I got the Business License Act. I got the the VAT Act. Any other act? Doing business in the Bahamas? You have the real property tax. You have the Stamp Duty Act. Any more? So all taken into consideration. All right. You have, let's take three.
You said the real property tax act is applied under when you're doing business in the Bahamas.
Oh, yes.
How would that apply if you're a business operating from, let's just say, from home, or if you're a home-based business? Because
No.
I know some persons, I
Yeah.
guess they put themselves down as home-based business, or even if they have an apartment, they still would consider themselves a home-based business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, this is just generally, not everybody, not all of
Okay.
the everybody. Yes.
Okay.
But you raise that because I want you to be able to take all that you learn in this course and apply it. So you don't want to throw a blanket over everything, but you got to be able to pick up what is relevant based on what you're dealing with. So that's fine. So if you have someone who is between the ages of...
Miss Archer, I have a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, Miss Archer. You can hear me?
Yeah. No, you're breaking up. Go
Oh, you
ahead.
can hear me now? Okay,
Uh,
I have a question about the Stamp Duty Act. There was a act roll out recently, right? An updated act for the government stamp duty.
They made some amendments.
They made some, okay, that's just one clarification.
Yeah, they made some amendments. Okay, so when you have entrepreneurs, persons who want to establish business, there are three different ways that they can choose. So we know that going into business attracts different requirements. You can have statutory reporting, you can have filing requirements, you have annual licenses, you have contractual agreements. Some depends on the nature of the business. You have to put controls in place. You have to have policies and procedures to go with those operational policies. And then you have to look at, make sure you have accounting records, financial records, and you have to look at the relationship between the owners of the company and the persons operating it. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're going into business. So let's just take the one that Dimitri mentioned, which is at home, a home-based business. A home-based business is a sole proprietorship. So if you were advising someone between the ages, I'm gonna give you 3 blocks: 25 to 35, 35 to 55, 55 to 70. What would be your advice to them with regard to starting a business as a sole proprietor? Dimitri, you could start.
Okay, you said, what was the first age group?
25 to 35, then 35 to 55, and 55 to 70. And I just stop at 70 because that may be the age they go to for NIB soon.
So my advice for someone who at the age of 25 to 35 with a sole proprietorship business, I think that would be ideal at that age point, at that age group. The fact that, you know, most small business or most business that start out aren't really as successful, so they can eventually kind of use it as a learning curve. From 35 to 50, I wouldn't suggest it, because at that age, you find a person to be more settled in their life. They're ready. I mean, if you're looking at, you know, starting a business, you have to be financially stable at some point. So you're financially stable. You may have home. You may have a lot of assets that are in your that are in your name, your personal name. And if anything was to happen with your business, that could negatively impact your personal assets at that point. And then at the older age, at age 50 to 70, I think it was
5 to 70.
at age 55 to 70, for sole proprietorship, I think that may not be as good of an idea. I think that you may want to either look at a business partner, or either structuring your business a little differently. Mostly because at that age, you know, you may not be able. I know when you have a small business, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy. At that age, unless you are a person who's been in business for a while, to manage a business yourself at that age, I think it may be a lot for someone at that age without any prior experience. So I think doing a joint venture may be more feasible for that age group.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Anything different?
For me, I guess in this role as a certified financial planner, even though you have the different age groups, I guess for me, I have to look at it holistically, looking at the business plan that they're presenting. And then one of the things that I also take into consideration, especially for the younger group, is the level of education. Because you can have somebody, 25, but based on their education, based on experience, they may be, able to move forward. So for me, I would just have to look at the full picture, and then I would be able to better advise as to what type of plan they should go into.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
I think the first thing for me would be, regardless of the age, their either source of income or their means, I guess it's the same thing, their source of income, or how they would think of gaining the capital to start this business off. And then if they had any previous experience within whatever field of business they're trying to enter into or create and establish now, and probably their targeted market would be of concern for me. And then we can look into if they have any supporting financial details to help support. Look into those.
Okay. Anyone else? Because I notice all of you have gone to the point of how that person, or how you would assist that person in deciding how to set up the business. But what I want you to think about, when someone comes to you, and they say they want to start a business, or they've started a business, or they want to expand a business, you look at the structure that they have in place, irregardless of the age. Now, I know Dimitri said at the beginning, the sole proprietorship is good. I like his point that they're young, so they're doing trial and error. But whenever you're looking at a business venture, always think about first and foremost, before you even advise about how to structure it, where to get financing, is what structure would you need, looking at the liability that that person will be exposed to. That drives you as to giving them advice as to whether or not they should have a trading ads company, which is a sole proprietorship, or whether they should form a partnership with 2 or more persons, or whether or not they should incorporate a company. Again, I agree with Dimitri, when you're hitting that age 50 or so, you would not want a sole proprietorship, because you could see over time, a lot of businesses, when that person died, that is it. The business is finished. Versus if you incorporate a company, then you have perpetual succession. But the issue that comes with it, but incorporating a company, is that there is a lot of regulatory filings. And of course, you know, it is more fees you have to pay. And if your company is a company that is making over the threshold, then of course, that means that you must have good accounting records for VAT purposes. So it's a lot of things you have to think about, whether or not that person is willing to go down that road of a company, which can reduce their liability, which can make them more attractive if they want to get capital, bring in new investors, or they want to form a partnership, 2 or 3 persons together, and draft up a partnership agreement, laying out what happens on death or bankruptcy, or if one of the partners decide that they want to leave. So it's an agreement that they come up with, or whether they just want to do it single-handedly as a sole proprietor, which is inexpensive.
What is the fees associated with a incorporated company, and is it annual?
Okay, so first you have to pay for the company to be incorporated itself. And that could range with different figures. Some people charge 1,000, some companies charge 1,500. It depends. So you incorporate the company. Then after you incorporate the company, well, when you incorporate the company, that's when they go and they get you the name. So all of that is done, and they have the subscribers, and then you have to have your first meeting, appointing your directors and officers for your company. After that, you have annual filings that need to be done. So when you incorporate that company, and that's normally done through a financial corporate service provider here locally, once you incorporate that company, then you would appoint that financial corporate service provider as your registered agent and as your registered office, if you're not going to use a law firm for your registered office. And they would actually carry out all of your regulatory filings for you for an annual fee. And then they're not going to do your VAT filings. You have to do that yourself. You have to do your NIB filings. But what they will do will be the filings to the Registrar General, the ones that you're going to need when you conduct business to get your certificate of good standing. They will do that part of it. But the filings that need to be done and the approvals that need to be done for your ongoing day-to-day business, such as your NIB, your Department of Environmental Health certification, all of those will be done by the company itself.
Ms. Archer,
Hmm?
Is this for self-employed persons as well as, okay, so for, because I know there's always this misconception that a business owner and a self-employed person is the same thing. If a person has a business and they're working mobile, so let's say, for instance, they have an appliance business and they're just working they have a mobile company. Would this go for them as well, or more of a person who actually they're the owner of a company or the CEO of a company that they want to start? Is it the same standard for both with all
No.
of these things to incorporate the business?
No, there's two different things.
Okay.
You decided, if you decided right now that you wanted to start selling, I don't know, anything, flowers from your house, right? So you're doing business from home, or you're doing it from your car, right? That's a trading as, that's a sole proprietorship.
Okay.
All the liabilities are on you. So say if you ordered a bulk of flowers and you were not able to pay your bill over time, and the company now decides they want to sue you. When they sue you, they're suing you as you, which means they could go behind your house, they could take your car, they could take your property, whatever assets that you have, they can take those to enforce what you owe them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the risk with a sole proprietorship.
So
Now,
sorry.
go ahead.
No, I was asking, so in the same scenario with a person selling flowers, mobile, would they be able to incorporate that business?
Yes, they can.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. I thought it was only if you had a business front, you can incorporate, not if you're working mobile.
No, you can still incorporate it.
Okay, understood.
Yes.
Okay.
And so
Thank
when
you.
when you incorporate it, you reduce the risk.
Understood.
So if someone is it the same way, like I said, you ordered the flowers, you're unable to pay. So when they bring the lawsuit, they wouldn't bring the lawsuit in your name. They bring the lawsuit in the name of the company.
Okay.
So when they sue, they look at whether the company can pay for it.
Ms. Archer, so if I understand you correctly, then when we think about risk, when it comes to a business, it would be in the best interest then to incorporate your business. It may cost you a bit more, but in the long term, let's say, when you're thinking about it in a legal standpoint, if something were to happen, then you are better off if it's incorporated rather than having a sole ownership, like you say, where they cannot come after your personal items.
Right, right. But then, like I said, let's say if you're gonna start a little business now, I don't know, selling shoes, selling here, bobby pin, pants, or whatever. I agree with Dimitri that first you gotta see before you incorporate a company, whether there's a market for it. Whether or not you think the business can survive, because you know businesses is trial and error. But let's just say you find something, people like it, the business is coming, it's people are asking for your product. You can source your product on a timely manner. The prices aren't that high. You can bring it in, your customs duty, and when you put your markup, it's not that bad. Then you could think about, again, like we were saying just now, you could continue from your house or the back of your car. You can incorporate a company to reduce your liability. Then based on your profits going forward, you could decide, I need to rent a little space. But renting a little space, remember again, gives you added cost. So may at that point of time, you may want to invite other investors. So you can spread that risk. So that's the difference between them. Now, if you do a partnership, let's say you and your sister and your brother, or your sisters decide we want to go into the same floral business, you can draw up an agreement with the three of you, and you could set out your conditions in that agreement. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? But remember, in a partnership, each partner has unlimited liability. Unless you have general partners where you try to limit their exposure. And then you have the limited partner who's not a part of the decision making at all, but the general partner is.
You feel as if the partnership route makes a lot of sense. I say that because at least with a sole proprietorship, you understand your liabilities, you understand your risk and your assets. When you have a partnership, you have to take in consideration now each partner liabilities, each partner's assets, and then also, I think I'm pretty sure the liabilities under the company is split equally. So let's just say you have a partner who goes out there and does something from a personal aspect, let's just say stealing by way of employment, and that partner is now on trial for this crime. Now it negatively impacts your business. And then now let's say the person who he stole from wants those funds back. Now he's coming after the business. Given the fact that that's a partnership, wouldn't that negatively impact all persons involved?
Yes. And that's why partnerships are geared, partnership agreements and the Partnership Act is geared towards accounting and the legal professions. But they do have some people who would start a little mom and pop shop as partners, two brothers together, or uncle and nephew, or people do it. But it's more geared towards those professionals. So now, when you're advising someone about a business and what they want to do, the first thing you have to think about is what type of business, the person think what type of business they want to open. And when you look at the type of business you want to open, you have to know who is the regulatory agency for that business. And what type of approvals you will need in order to carry out that business. So say if you want to do a barber shop, all that requires is just that's a regular business. So it's nothing extraordinary that you have to do. If it's farming, you go to the Ministry of Agriculture. Flowers is just a regular business. If you want to do collection, be like a collection agent, then of course you need approval from the Securities Commission. If you want to be a food vendor, you have to go to the Department of Environmental Health, and you have to go to the Royal Bahamas Police Force in the licensing section to get your vendor's permit, and Department of Health to get your certificate of sanitation. And those are annual renewals. If you want to be a justice of the peace, you have to go to the Attorney General's office, and they'll give you the license to practice. And that's upon application. So each business, you have to determine who is the regulatory body, what approval or license that you can obtain from that agency, and then you also have to know the frequency of those approvals. Gets complicated, hey? So if you wanted to do the floral business, for a regular business, you have to have a valid passport. If you are a foreign person, you have to be approved by the National Economic Council. You have to have a copy of the Certificate of Incorporation if you're a company. You have to have a National Insurance Board, your number. Current letter of good standing if you're a business. Any lease or rental agreement for the location of your business. And then you need approvals from the Department of Physical Planning, the Ministry of Works, the Department of Environmental Health, the police force if it's alcoholic beverages. If you're doing it from home, like the example we said earlier, you will get approval from the Department of Physical Planning. Now, this is the part here I was going to say earlier to Dimitri. You have to show proof of real property tax for your premises in which the business of the applicant is located. And you also have to show proof that the applicant is the owner of the property or the premises. So yes, you could do a home-based business, but you have to show one, either that you're tax exempt or that taxes have been paid and that you're the owner of the home.
Ms. Archer, so just a quick question. We would be able to say start a mobile business, but in regards to just say an apartment person a renter. There's no legislation or regulatory approvals that you can obtain to have a valid home-based business. You're calling home-based because in your description, that apartment front is your home, even though you're a renter. So is there any validation with operating like that?
I think what you have to do, if I hear them saying it correctly, the place where you're at, the owner has to prove that they have paid rent, that they have paid taxes.
Okay. So you'll have to get some form of documents from that landlord.
Yes.
No support, okay.
And of course, the government has guides on how to apply for like a liquor license. They have guides on environmental health services, the services that they provide. They have guides on building control. So all of these things have been provided by the government to assist. And of course, renewal is very easy. But once your turnover is more than $100,000, and you know that the government has taken that effort now with the linkage with the click to clear, that they look at the items that you've cleared, the value of your inventory, and then they look at your filings for that. And now they're coming in to do inspections when you claim that your revenue is under $100,000. So you do an assessment on that.
Also, I think the government has had meetings with the banks where we now monitor if customers are doing business transactions or conducting business through personal accounts, which goes against the personal credit agreement for most banks.
Yes.
And that's to kind of gear customers towards, of course, getting their business license and doing the business properly so the government can, I guess, properly monitor and collect those funds.
Yeah, so they're closing all, and the banks were doing that push towards not using personal account for businesses maybe for the last 15 years. Remember, they were pushing, a lot of people were using their personal account for their small sole proprietorship businesses. So they've been pushing that for quite a while. So government also has licenses, what they call provisional licenses. And those are more or less like when you want to have less time. You want to start something new, a new business. And so it's a temporary license. And it's given for 90 days. And it's really just to help a business get up and running quickly. But the business has to be deemed low risk. And you have to get all the valid approvals from the other government agencies, like the Department of Physical Planning or the Ministry of Works or Environmental Health Services. So under this process, this provisional license, it enables a business to move forward with whatever issue it had or task it's trying to do. Like say if it wants to open a bank account, it can get a provisional license. You heard about that one, Dimitri? Anybody coming in with a provisional license?
No, ma'am, I haven't seen that at all. I wasn't aware of that either.
Yeah, well, they do have provisional licenses. And these are normally for home base or trading as business in a non-regulated industry. So an incorporated company, a non-Bahamian company, or any business with a storefront or business that's operating in a regulated industry cannot get a provisional license. So who can get it? Someone who's doing administrative services, someone who's selling arts and craft, clothing and accessory, a florist, someone who's doing like housekeeping services, plumbing or roofing, printing, furniture manufacturing. Those kind of persons can get a provisional license to open up a bank account. So even though you get a provisional license, you still have to get a business license. So it's just a quick step in order for you to facilitate whatever task you need to do. So business licenses, tax payable for new businesses is $100. And the filing for renewals of business licenses are due on or before the 1st of January. There's a 10% tax liability for late payment and a 5% interest on tax liability, anything over 30. And if you advise the Department of Inland Revenue late that you have ceased your business, they're going to charge you $100. So that's on businesses. Hold on to my sheet. Where did they disappear to? Now I've included in there the FAQ from real property tax. The question is, when is tax due? Anybody knows? When is tax due?
And the year, but real property tax?
Mm-hmm.
I think real property tax is due monthly. Oh, sorry, annually.
Yes. Which month?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one.
March 31st.
Okay.
Remember the government is on a different cycle from us. March 31st. And they do have payment plans. And is there a penalty if you don't pay your real property tax?
Yes, ma'am.
5%. So if you don't pay your real property tax on time, they can add on a 5% interest. And of course, the treasurer can put a lien against your property. And of course, if you don't pay it for a long period of time, then of course the government can take your property after due process. And you can apply. Go ahead.
Would the lien on the property override the first registered mortgage that a bank would have against the property between the customer?
That's a very good question. We haven't had a court case yet about it. When you have a mortgage, what's the first thing you pay out when you exercise the power of sale? What does the law say? What's the first thing you pay? What's the first bill you pay?
Real property tax?
Property tax. And that's why the bank should make sure on an annual basis that real property taxes are paid.
I mean, is that fair? I mean, the bank takes in consideration the calculation for real property tax, right? Now, we've admitted that there are amendments that are done, you know, almost like every month or every year. Let's look at the amendment where I think exemption moved from 250,000 to 300,000, right? So let's just say a person would have started their mortgage 15 years ago when the exemption was where the exemption was the
50?
Where the exemption was the 250,000. And then the government changed it. Let's just say in a very let's just say it's a one-off situation where the customer mortgage was 200, I'm sorry, 3, how do I want to put that now? But let's just say when the mortgage was taken on, the customer was exempted. But then now when the government changed the law, now the bank is now taking into consideration that the customer doesn't have the real property tax to pay, or the real property tax is up to a certain amount. So they do take it into consideration in their total debt service payment amount. But it should be the customer's responsibility to pay the real property tax, because the bank is then saying, we're not going to lend you this amount because we know you have to pay real property tax and you need to make sure your real property tax is paid. So this is going to give you the financial leeway to say, all right, I have to take this money and go and pay real property tax. So if the banks are being considerate enough to take in consideration that when we're lending you this money, we're making sure you have enough space in your expenses to pay a real property tax, but the customer doesn't pay the real property tax. I mean, from an aspect of considering how much customers the bank have to follow up all those customers to make sure that they're paying their real property tax. I mean, from an administration standpoint, that is a lot.
I just turned it on so I can watch the line.
Yeah, that remember in the mortgage document itself, the mortgage document states the obligations of the mortgagor and the mortgage. So if it is the mortgage's responsibility in the mortgage deed to pay real property tax, that obligation is on them. But I'm saying when a bank is getting ready to exercise its power of sale, because the mortgagor hasn't paid, and you've gone through the Homeowners Protection Act, all the process for that, and now you're exercising your power of sale, the first thing to be paid is the government. whatever amount that is.
Yeah, I-
But the obligation is on. They read the mortgage deed to see what the obligations are, what are they required to do.
So you feel the exercise that the government is completing now is fair?
Oh, that's a different question now.
That's why I asked, because you have historically you have in the Bahamas where this law was not enforced, even though it was stated, it wasn't enforced because historically Bahamians never used to sell their homes. It was passed down from generation to generation. Now, taking into consideration, you make an amendment to the law and you are now extending person's mortgage from 8 years now all the way back up to 25 years because now you want to make sure that this tax is paid. I mean, I don't think it's fair. But
Let me add 2 words. New day.
That's just trouble.
What you going to say?
I say Miss Archer's trouble, a new day.
Well, that's the answer.
Yeah, but it's not fair. I agree with Dimitri. It's not. It really isn't.
Well, in other countries around the world, people pay their taxes, even though they say that we are hiding people's money that they should be paying to their home country. But they say you have to pay these taxes. But if you are a pensioner, you could get a little discount.
a little discount if you haven't paid your property tax in 10 years. And then on top of that, the government is charging 5% on top of everything you owe year by year. I mean, I don't think a little discount is going to help someone who's close to retirement. You about 50 thinking your mortgage is paid off and you can't get your satisfaction because the government asking you to pay $65,000.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think the rebate or the benefit would count to arrears. I think it's current. That wouldn't make any sense because they're trying to collect money. So it wouldn't be on arrears. And then I heard that a lot of persons who have businesses, like who trying to get their business license, when they go there, they find out that their real property tax is not being paid. And they were told they have to go and pay that first and then come back and renew their licenses.
And then also the governments are making their own assessments on the value of your home. So if you knew your home was under the threshold, the government is sending persons out there who are doing assessments on the home based on what they think the value of your home is. So you might think you exempted and you go and check with your property tax, you find out you owe your property tax for 4 or 5 years because the government revalued or reassessed your home.
But they should have one way of doing that. I thought assessments at year end, and then the billing come out in March, and then you have by December 31st of that year to pay your bill. Otherwise, on the 1st of January, they add on 5%.
Ms. Archer, that's not fair for someone who didn't even have a mortgage. I'm battling a situation regarding that right now. My mother and father built their home out of their pocket, did not go to the bank. And whoever these uneducated assessors are would come and say, oh, well, we're putting a value on your house and you have to pay it. My mother is over 65. How the hell she's going to pay something? I told them, well, y'all could go ahead and put whatever it is, but she's not paying it. And she's going to die and it's still not going to be paid. Just too bad, because it doesn't making any sense what they're doing.
So were they charging on what? You added something to it?
No, not at all. Not
No,
at all.
the value, the way that they're assessing it is based on the average sale of the properties in the area. So they use the most recent sales of the properties in the area. So it can
Oh.
either help you or it can break you. So the real property tax is assessed whether you have a mortgage on your house or not. The government requires you to pay real property tax if you own the property regardless. But if your area back in the day, the value of the properties was significantly low, but you see the area is becoming more popular and more persons are purchasing, they're building more high-end homes in the area. They're basically assessing you based on what they've seen the last few property sales for in the area property is. And why it's not fair, because our parents have built their home out of pocket and they may have only spent back in the day maybe 80,000, but because the property value now is 200,000 and the average price of the homes in the area is 350,000, they want to build persons
I
who
see.
wouldn't have come to the bank at all, or never would have been paid real property tax, which is not fair.
Yeah. But I see they have that catch-all phrase in terms of valuation of property. They say it
Yeah.
can't be done two ways. One is when you add to the property. The thing has to be added to the house. Because if it's not attached, then it's not considered real property. So you attach anything to your house, then the valuation can change. But they also have the catch-all phrase that general assessments of properties in the country can be done.
Ms. Acha, in a situation where someone was to get their own survey done or appraisal done on their home, would that go up against if government was to do their assessment? Which one comes out to be the accurate one? For instance, if you I'm in the insurance industry, so whenever we send a renewal out to a client for their home insurance, we normally tell them to make sure that they're accurately insured, because we penalize you if you're uninsured and you have a claim. So we had instances where we would, but depending on the particular insurer who we put the client through, that particular insurance company was offering free appraisals. So when these customers took up the option of getting their home appraised, they were blown away when the appraisal came back and their sum insured was 100% over the amount that they actually was insured for. This would be because I think it was Juanette who said her mom, they built their home out of pocket. Of course, back in the day, building materials cost way less. And since COVID, building materials has gone up 100%. So automatically, if your home was insured from 15, 20 years ago, it's going to be almost 100% more now. So if I was to get a client to have their home appraised and, their home is appraised for, let's just say 250,000, or no, under the real property tax, 210,000, can government then come in and do their own assessment and say, no, this is actually value 250 and go based on that amount?
Yeah.
Wow. So no matter what you do, government still will come out on top and say, okay, we say this is this, so we're going to go with us.
Yes, because the law under the real property tax gives the government the right to do an assessment.
Wow. So technically, persons who pay to get their home appraised is wasted monies.
No, you need that if you're getting a facility from or you're trying to sell it.
Okay.
Ms. Archer, I think what she's trying to ask you is, can you challenge the government assessment? Because you're telling me 250, but I've been paying for the past 5 years. It's only been valued at 210. How can you challenge that to make sure that the government isn't just trying to, get money out of me?
Correct.
And then that means then that if you have your assessment for 210, the government is saying that it's more, then you're gonna have to get another assessment done by a professional who is certified and respected in the industry.
Which is also on your dime. So you would have gotten paid for 2 assessments.
Yes. And then in addition to that, you're going to need a lawyer who's going to argue that, who's going to have to go back to the same thing we started with. He's going to have to go and find either a Bahamian case or an English case or a case from one of the Commonwealth jurisdictions where this matter has been argued against a government with regard to valuation of property?
Wow.
But what I'm saying though is that because it's a one size fit all with the assessments with the government, usually when customers provide appraisals, they don't fight it unless it's a significant amount. But the downside is that you would have to pay for the appraisal yourself and you don't get those funds back, which ranges from anywhere from $1,000 to $1,200. But because this exercise is more so to collect funds, you know, once you provide a appraisal and you fight it, usually the government would provide you with the discount, or they would cut some of the funds off of it, because for them it's just a, let me not say that like that, but it's a collection. It's an exercise basically to collect funds. So they're not going to fight it in court. They're going to discount it and go based on what you advise, because they know it's a one size fit all assessment process. They're not going to each home and assessing it that way. That's just going based on the area. So once you take the appraiser down there and say, hey, y'all have me assessed for this what I should be at, they'll make the amendments.
Mm-hmm.
Good day, everyone. I agree with Dimitri. I'm in the same situation with Bonnet. My parents, for example, have a vacant property in 2021 that was valued around $45,000. And then in 2022, it was reassessed and it was valued at 150,000, which blew my mind. So I just simply wrote them an email and then they changed it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes before you get all into the lawyer thing, sometimes you just go down there or you write them. Because sometimes I think, I don't know who's doing the assessment like Bonnet says, but
yeah,
a bit wild.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, the first step would be to go down there, but when you see you're not getting anywhere, and then they're more or less the route they're sending you is to go to the bank to refinance or to obtain a loan in order to pay them, then if you are that strong that the position that they're taking is incorrect, then you will have to seek legal advice.
All kind of expense, Mr. Archer. Too much expense for the poor people. Mr. Archer.
Yeah, I mean, who won't go to court against the government? That's another thing. Like, you know, like, I mean, thinking about it alone is, yes, that's a headache.
Exactly.
But Miss Archer, I have a question. Like in Bonnet's case, let's say no property taxes paid, and when her parents are no longer here, can the government go after Bonnet, for example?
Whoever they leave the property to.
Jesus.
The devil is a liar. Absolutely. Archer.
Okay, so now the point which he just made, that moves into a different law. That goes into the law of succession. And the government did.
Do we have any cases where the government would have repossessed the property due to unpaid government taxes? Where we could reference, or where our attorney could reference in a case like that?
I don't know of any off the top of my head. I can look if I find any, but I don't remember any.
That's one we're gonna be brush underneath the rug. That can get lost. We ain't going to that. I hear too much stories. That one go can get brushed under.
Yeah. No, I haven't heard any recently since all of this push for collection. But I could check. I'll check and see if there's any that was not pushed underneath the rug. Maybe someone they're trying to set an example of. I'll check. All right, we're gonna come back to real property tax. Let's talk about what time you normally finish? 12?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 12. Okay. So let's talk about another ticklish topic. So we've talked about where our laws came from. We know we are a member of the Commonwealth. So we can look and refer to other cases from other Commonwealth jurisdictions to make our stance before the court. We spoke about our judicature. We know that matters after you go to the Court of Appeal, you can apply to go to the Privy Council. We also talk about a person who wants to enter into a business where they have three choices. They can either be a sole proprietor doing a trading as, or they can form a partnership, but which is more suited towards the accounting or the legal professions. And then the third one is they can incorporate a company. Being mindful, like I said, if you're going to choose, you have to think about the regulatory agency. And for those that don't have such, they have provisional licenses that you can apply for to open your account for whatever purpose. Maybe you want to make, you probably want to order your first batch or your second or third batch, and you need a bank account to do it. If you're one of those low risk areas, the government will allow you a provisional license. So you can open the bank account and then you can go ahead and get your full license. Now, the next area I want us to discuss is looking at seeking residency in the Bahamas. So the first thing is a permanent resident. So a permanent residence, that's a legal status, and that's given to any individual for the duration of their life, unless, of course, the government revokes it. And that permanent residence gives them a right to reside and or work in the Bahamas. So to be a permanent resident, you can be a spouse of a Bahamian after 5 years of marriage, but you have to be in that marriage. So you have to be living as husband and wife. You could be a permanent resident if the person was born legitimately outside of the Bahamas to a married woman who is a citizen of the Bahamas, but the husband is not a citizen of the Bahamas. You could become a permanent resident if you are an investor and you want to reside in the Bahamas. You have to spend $750,000 or more, and you'll get a speedy consideration. Any police officer or prison official who's been employed with the government for more than 10 years can become a permanent resident. Teachers employed by the government or by any charitable or religious institution, after 10 years, they can become permanent residents. Nurses employed by government or a private hospital or healthcare facility, after 10 years, they can also become permanent residents. The minister of religion or any priest who have been employed for a minimum of 20 years, they can become a permanent resident. So you see why our population is growing, right? You have doctors, 20 years. Once they've been here 20 years, they can become permanent residents. Anybody who have held a legal work permit for more than 20 years, it has to be consecutive, they can become permanent residents. And any person who resided in the country for at least 10 years, not less than 20 years, and who had a work permit in any of the scales from 5 to 8, they can become permanent residents. So all those persons qualify to become permanent residents in the Bahamas. And in terms of documentation required, the fee is just $200. You write a letter to the Director of Immigration. You fill out the application form. You add in a medical certificate, a police certificate, 2 current photos, passport photo. You could add your photo of your spouse or your children. Excuse me, your birth certificate, character references, proof of your current immigration status, proof payment of any real property tax if applicable, and a copy of your conveyance for your property that you're purchasing in the Bahamas, letters from your school or any adoption papers. And you could apply to be a permanent resident in the Bahamas. Now, non-Bahamians who are married to a Bahamian national, they are eligible for a resident spouse permit. And this permit allows the spouses of Bahamians to legally live and work in the Bahamas. But they have to live with their Bahamian spouse. And they have to be married for less than 5 years at the time of the application. So once the 5 years arrives, then the non-Bahamian spouse can apply for an extension of their resident spouse permit or citizenship or permanent residency. And the application fee for that one again is $200. Now you could also apply for a resident belonger permit. So under Article 7 of the Constitution, it says, if you are permanently residing in the Bahamas at the time of the application, that is, a person born in the Bahamas to non-Bahamian parents, or persons born legitimately outside the Bahamas to a married Bahamian mother and a non-Bahamian father, or you are a foreign-born offspring of a Bahamian male and you're married to a non-Bahamian spouse, you can apply for a resident belonger permit. And then you have to apply again to immigration and a $200 fee and provide your medical and your police certificate. You can also apply to the government for homeowner identification. And that is issued in accordance with the International Persons Landholding Act. And this resident facilitates the entry of persons who lawfully own a primary residence in their country and they own a habitable residence in the Bahamas. So you can get that ID as a foreigner. Now the government also has two types of work permits. You can have just a regular work permit, or you can have a short-term work permit. And they also offer approvals for government contract workers. So a non-Bahamian, and if you're a non-Bahamian, you want to work and live in the Bahamas for more than 90 days, first you have to be authorized to do so by way of a valid work permit issued by Department of Immigration. If you want to work for less than 90 days, then you apply for a short-term work permit. And again, the procedure is the same. You apply to immigration, $200 non-refundable fee and you provide your medical and your police record and your other documents. The short term, like I said, is under 90 days and is really only meant for emergencies or a one-time application. So say if someone wants to come in to go to the airport just to repair a plane or fly in just to repair a motor on a yacht, they would get a short-term work permit. For a government contract worker, the government can employ non-Bahamian nationals on contract. And what's required is a copy of the contract from the government ministry, your passport photo, your marriage certificate, your birth certificate, and you normally attach with that a memorandum of request. Now, citizenship. I know everybody is waiting on the decision that's coming out next week. So, citizenship. Automatic Bahamian citizenship is given to persons, one, born in the Bahamas, to married parents, with either parent being a Bahamian citizen. Born to an unmarried Bahamian female in or outside of the Bahamas. Born outside of the Bahamas to a married Bahamian male who was not born outside of the Bahamas, adopted by a married Bahamian male, or adopted by a single Bahamian female. Any other foreign national has to apply for citizenship. Everybody get that now, right? That's automatic citizenship.
Is that retroactive?
Retroactive to where? To where? I said, what did I say when I started citizenship? I said, we're waiting on the ruling in May. Let's see how that goes.
Oh, okay.
There's
As
a
of
ruling,
May.
yeah, in May, there's a ruling that's coming, dealing with another matter.
Mhm.
Remember that matter, right?
No.
Everybody, what? Everybody,
Refresh our memory.
what the man name now? Looking right at him.
The gentleman who was sent back to Haiti, you're talking about?
No, Shanty Towns.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yes, that ruling is this week. That ruling is this week. But if you notice in the papers, they are applying. So, automatic citizenship, born in the Bahamas, the married parents, and either parent is a Bahamian. Or born to an unmarried Bahamian female in or outside of the Bahamas. Or you're born outside of the Bahamas to a married Bahamian male who was not born outside the Bahamas. Or you are either adopted by a married Bahamian male or adopted by a single Bahamian female.
So, Ms. Archer, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Shawnee Miller Ubio, I think I pronounced the last name properly, but if she has the child in the US, the child will automatically get citizenship, or she would have to apply and go through the process for her child?
She has to go to she don't fit into any of these. Listen again.
Okay.
Born in the Bahamas. Just put yourself when I say born in the Bahamas. A child of yours. Okay, born in the Bahamas, to married parents, with either parent being a Bahamian citizen. So hers should be automatic. No, hers wasn't born here. Okay, she wasn't born here. So born in the Bahamas to married parents, and either parent being a Bahamian citizen. So she wouldn't qualify there because the baby wasn't born here. Then the next one says born to an unmarried Bahamian female, whether they were born in the Bahamas or not. She's married, so she don't fall there either. Born outside of the Bahamas to a married Bahamian male, so she don't qualify into that one either. It's not adopted, so she don't qualify there either. So you see, this is where that gender equality committee is asking for this provision to be changed.
Okay.
That's the part where they're arguing for, that when a Bahamian woman married outside to a foreigner and a child is born outside of the Bahamas, they want to be able to pass on their citizenship.
Okay, I understand now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you don't fall under those categories, what do you have to do? You have to be able to meet one of the following requirements. You have to be a legal permanent resident in the Bahamas who has had the legal status for 10 years, including 12 months prior to putting in your application. Or you could be a female spouse of a Bahamian citizen, or be born in the Bahamas after independence to non-Bahamian parents. Or you could be a child, adopted or biological, who has at least one Bahamian parent. Or be a child born in the Bahamas to non-Bahamian parents. So you see, she'll fall under the fourth one. She's a child, biological, who has at least one Bahamian parent. That's
Okay.
it.
So, follow-up question on that. Okay. Her child, based on that fourth provision, right?
Right.
But in the Bahamas, dual citizenship isn't recognized. So that means if she registered the child as a Bahamian, does that mean she has to renounce the American citizenship for the child?
She probably would, and I don't think she'll do that.
Okay.
What would you call it now for fees? She'll be getting the American fees. She'll have to pay international, so she may not do that. But that's something that they have to look at. That's what the Gender Equality Committee is fighting for. So why should it be only men who could pass on their citizenship? Why not the women? So if you are a non-Bahamian and you want to live here, you don't want to work, you just want to be here, you could apply to immigration for a permit to reside. Or they sometimes call it an annual permit. And the fee doesn't change. It's $200. More or less the same documentation as all the other approval processes. Medical, police certificate, your passport, birth certificate, marriage certificate, all those.
Sorry, Miss Archer, I have another question.
Uh-huh.
So can someone be arrested for having dual citizenship?
You mean here in the Bahamas?
Here in the Bahamas, yeah. Or has there been any case like that?
No, I'm trying, that's in my mind, that's where I'm going to see if I recall it, and I don't. Yeah, but think about it, even in the country where you would have gotten the second one, your lawyer would have advised you what are the requirements in your home jurisdiction. They should have, as to whether or not it's permissible or not. Sound like you know something, but we don't know.
No, it's just that I know of a lot of middle class families whose
Hmm?
kids tend to have two passports for the, for purpose of schooling abroad. And they interchangeably play around with them.
You mean a Bahamian passport plus another passport?
Yes, ma'am. So I just found it strange.
Which country is the second one from?
The US.
Mm.
That's why I asked if one could be arrested for it. Or it isn't something that I guess is enforced?
Probably not.
Okay.
I'll see what I could find out for you.
It was good to know though. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll see what I could find out. All right, before we leave, let me just give you all an idea of how much the government charges for these immigration fees. I think the minister spoke about, I can't remember how he worded it. He was speaking about the labor force and changes to be made. So immigration fees go in scales. If you look at scale 1, the fee is $15,000 if you are in any one of these, if you're applying to any one of these: head of a private bank, an executive director, a general manager, a CFO, a CEO, a project manager. If you're bringing one of those in, you have to pay a fee of $15,000. If you're bringing in a casino manager, a company secretary, a construction manager, a dentist, a cruise director, director of entertainment, a branch manager, a banker, an architect, an actuary, the fee is $12,500.
These fees are annually?
What?
These fees are annually that they have to pay the work permit?
I think so,
Yes, they are annually.
Yeah, annually.
So rather than source local talent, some companies are willing to pay that?
What did we agree on? Less than an hour. Okay. I want you all to stay focused. Stay focused. Now that fee of $12,500, I only gave you all 5 names. That includes if you bring in any attorneys, also any auditors, any director of safety, director of room, director of housekeeping, director of golf, director of food and beverages. I want you to listen to these job titles, because this is how the money is coming in. Economist, doctor, editor, executive housekeeper, human resource manager, group sales. Like you were saying, Dimitri, and Bahamians could have these jobs. These sound like things that people could do. Insurance underwriter, you could bring one of them in. Investment advisor, an IT specialist, an island key manager, a landscape architect, a landscape design, a laundry manager, a maintenance manager, director of food, a maitre d', a medical practitioner, marine biologist, a producer, a physical planner, a scientist, a veterinarian, a surveyor, a town planner. 12,500.
Ms. Archer, I hear you, but who do we blame for that though? I mean, somebody.
I
Come
blame
on.
you. I blame your.
You blame us and I blame the government.
But all of that is us.
But we have educated people that can do it.
But I'm saying the amount of in this scale is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. These positions should be on exceptional basis only.
Agreed.
Food and beverage manager. Please tell me, why would I bring one of them? Why laundry? If anything, he should come on a show the person what to do.
Especially if you could pay them $12,000 less. I mean, and their salaries are also inflated. So you can pay somebody locally, you paying that person 120,000 a year. You can pay that person 100,000. Well, it'd be more than 120. That's the base salary plus 12,000 on top of that. You got to pay the government. That's $132,000 a year. You can pay a local $100,000.
Roman board. Don't forget
Roman board, yeah, and they cover for directors. I know they probably cover in the fees in reference to if their children come over with schooling and vehicle.
One trip home per annum. All of that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
To pay the Bahamian 80,000 or 90,000. All no, they're not giving you that. I'm sorry. So your fees is $9,000 if you're bringing in an administration officer, if you're bringing in a chemist, a chief steward, an estate manager, a dental hygienist, a physiotherapist, a pharmacist, a personnel officer, a physiotherapist, a chef, including a pastry chef, a trust officer, a trust administrator, a wine steward. You pay a fee of $7,500 if you're bringing in an airline pilot, an air traffic controller, an administrative assistant or supervisor, an assistant golf professional, assistant housekeeping for a hotel of 400 or more rooms, assistant maitre d', an auctioneer, a beautician, a barber, a boat captain, a butcher, a chef de partie, a cosmetologist, a croupier, a farmer, executive secretary, a flight instructor, a golf professional, a foreign exchange clerk, a harbor pilot, a head bartender, a helicopter pilot, a jeweler, a nurse. Now you see why all these people are here. A real estate salesman, a shipbroker, a tennis professional, a tour representative. A doctor fee is $6,250. For $6,000 per annum, you could bring in an accounts assistant, you could bring in a butler, a cabinet maker, carpenter, a disc jockey, a dancer. Dimitri will know about that. Drywall mason, flight attendant, a governess, a head houseman, a hotel manager, an air conditioning mechanic or technician, a manicurist, you could bring them in, a nanny, a musician, pedicurist, secretary, sonographer, telephone supervisor, a tile layer, a truck driver, a watchmaker, or a repairman. You could bring any one of those things in. You could even bring in a photographer, a journalist. You could bring in an interpreter. For $5,000, you could bring in a cook, a dental assistant, a baker, a hotel manager for 50 to 99 rooms. You could bring in a dance teacher, a teacher. And then for $4,000, you could bring in a mechanic, a houseman, a groomer, a girl Friday. Why would we bring in these kind of people? A shoe cobbler, a seamstress, a radio dispatcher, a presser, a teller, a typist. All of those you can bring in. And last but not least, not last, one before the last, 2,000, you could bring in a bellboy, a bellman, a construction helper, a deckhand, a farm laborer, a handyman, a hotel helper, a janitor, a living maid. And last but not least, you could pay $500 for a farm laborer if your part of the registered farmers. So now you see, you can join the movement on citizenship. So next class, we're going to talk about purchasing a property, guide the mortgages. We'll talk about trust and a little bit about the areas that are reserved for Bahamians. There was a recent case this year on a matter before the courts, where a matter that was reserved for Bahamians is actually being done by foreigners on Bay Street. Y'all remember that matter?
Is it the situation with the Greeks?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So we'll talk about matters that are reserved for businesses that are reserved for Bahamians. All right.
I mean, to be honest, Ms. Archer, I don't think much is going to change because if you look at the midterm budget, they tabled this year, if anybody like paid attention to it, they have for next year in 2005 and 2006, they're under immigration, the fees, the money they expect to make doubles.
I mean, more y'all could be out of job.
So, and I think they really focus on like the high end work permits as well. Because if this in 2000, I think I have it somewhere saved here, but if in 2021, they made around 95 million, and then 2022, they expect to make 127, but by 2025, they expect to make 145.
Mm-hmm.
And by 2026, they expect to make 186 million. So it's like the money coming from somewhere.
Either they're increasing the fees or they're issuing more
Yeah, so
permits.
they want more people to populate the country.
There, but it's one or two. And the thing about it is we as a people need to demand from the minister a breakdown of how this money is, how are we coming to this increase? Is it more applications or is it the fees are going up? So if you don't hear that the fees have gone up, right? Then the only thing you can say and make that assumption is that more of them are coming in. And then here comes the Ministry of Labor now. If more of them are coming in and you keep saying that you're having these, what is call it? Job fairs. Look at the job fairs and see which jobs are advertised. All the odd jobs advertised are all the low levels. Because then you have to look again at in some of these big projects what the heads of agreement state.
Yeah.
When those documents are signed, they tell you who's coming. You want us to come here and do business in your country? This is what we are willing to do for you. So, the hard pill to swallow, but that is what it is. That is what it is. So you have to keep their feet to the fire. And I don't think their feet are being held to the fire because as they ask for more and more money from the poor people, more and more money is being spent, but I have to still be avoiding potholes. Where is this money being spent? And as you increase the taxes and you want to stimulate the economy, and yes, you want to put a process in place, but I think the process is just too, like you did it too quickly. For a small person who wants to start a business as a trading house, it is very difficult for them. So what they should have done is let the people get started, form their small businesses, then get your government workers to go out and then show them how to do it. You have to teach people how to do it, because remember now, the average grade is H. So you can't frustrate the people. They're trying to make a living based upon the little bit of knowledge that they have. So it's a long road, but you're forcing people to do things illegally now because it's just too much red tape for them and they get frustrated. That's my 5 cents. New day. Anyhow, have a wonderful weekend. And we will chat next week, Saturday. All right?
All right, thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you,
Yes.
bye.
All right,
All
bye.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.